Society is a 60-year-old, 3,000 strong membership organization with an ethos centered around bravery. With hubs in London, Singapore, Dubai, India, and more, and now the latest hub in New York, we create safe spaces for uncomfortable conversations. Over the last number of months, COVID-19 has catapulted all of us into working virtually. I am joining you this morning, or indeed good evening if you're in London or in Europe or elsewhere, from New York, a city with the dubious distinction of being the epicenter of COVID-19 in New York, and indeed in America, perhaps the world. We are gradually getting to a state of reopening. And depending on the timing of that, which is unclear, one thing is for sure: working remotely and managing virtual teams is a reality that we will all need to contend with for the near term and into the future. Today, I am joined by an illustrious panel who've dedicated their careers to the arts of managing global teams. And today they are doing so with great success virtually as well. Let's please meet our team. Ladies and gentlemen, kindly switch your videos on. Very good morning.
Morning.
Delighted to have you all. I'm going to do some quick intros, and then I'm going to invite our audience to introduce themselves in the Q&A function. But first, Alex, quick intro. Give us your title and your organization. You do it so much more eloquently than I.
My name is Alexandra Lioutikoff, Alex. I'm the president of Universal Music Publishing for the LATAM region and the US Latin, and I'm based in Miami.
Good morning, Alex. Next,
Good morning.
Ginger, you're also calling us from Florida this morning.
That's correct. It's a delight to be here, and good evening, good afternoon, and good morning to everyone around the world. My name is Ginger Taggart. I'm the Vice President of the Luxury Portfolio Marketing for Intercontinental Hotels Group. It's a pleasure to be here.
Very good morning. And Ed, New York. Is New York where you hang your hat?
Indeed, I'm here in New York City with you.
Fantastic.
So my name is Ed Wells, and I am the head of international for Sesame Workshop, which is the parent company, of course, of Sesame Street.
Tremendous. And finally, my friend and colleague, Helena.
Hi, I'm Helena Verellen, also calling in from New York. Most recently, up until last week, I ran global strategic partnerships and business development for Audible, and currently doing quite a few projects, and one in the work that I hope to be able to announce fairly soon.
Thank you, Helena. And Helena is a colleague of mine on the New York board of the Marketing Society. So I know we have many people on this webcast in our audience, and I'd love to hear from all of you. So please pop into the Q&A function the answer to the following question. What city are you joining from? And what is the leadership trait that you are using most in this era? So let's get the Q&A function going. Fantastic. See people joining from London, I see Ireland, I see New York. Okay, so as the audience completes that first task, I'm going to invite Alex to also answer that question. What's the leadership quality you're leaning on most, Alex, in these rather extraordinary times?
Connectivity, being extra connected all the time with my team and my colleagues.
What about yourself, Ginger?
I would say empathy. I heard a great quote about this situation that says, we are all in the same storm, but we may be in very different boats. So whether it's people dealing with elder care, child care, work pressures, wherever we are in the world, right, alongside COVID-19, it's critically important, as Alex said, not only to be connected, but to empathize individually with what team members, partners, distributors, owners might need.
What are you finding as a useful quality, Ed?
Well, I think communication is absolutely critical right now. So absolute clarity and precision and communication, but also providing vision. I think this is a moment to provide vision to your teams and help everyone see what's coming and where we're headed to.
Any additional quality, Helena, you would emphasize?
No, I echo what everyone is saying. I think patience is probably something a lot of leaders have learned in the last few months, which probably wasn't necessarily something that we all were very good at, but it all ties into what I think every panel member has mentioned.
Yes, I can certainly identify with the need to build patience, communications, connectivity, all with a base of empathy. Well, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. So, Alex, let's chat about the scope of your responsibilities in terms of Latin America. But before we go to that, if you could summarize, what's the difference? I'd like all of the panelists to think about this question, about how you're leading now versus pre-COVID.
Okay, so when we started in quarantine, I think many people thought, mostly in the US, in Latin America, mostly because in we thought it's gonna be just a month. And another thing is in Latin America, everything is starting late. Like the peak is coming up in Mexico and in Brazil, supposedly in July and August. Even though they are getting out of the quarantine in Colombia, they're starting to open up, in Chile, in Argentina. But so we started thinking that it's going to be just a month, and everybody thought, wow, this is great. We are connecting a lot via Zoom meetings. There was no travel, and suddenly we are really connecting, because when you travel and then you get on a plane and then you go to one country, all that takes you 2-3 days, and then you have to go to another country. And suddenly we had no choice but to connect right there. And we just realized that we are connecting and talking way more and sharing and discussing issues way more. So for us in Latin America, it's a little bit wait and see. As in from Europe or the US, the things are looking a little bit more clear. In Latin America, it's not clear at all. I might not be able to go to the region until next year or even longer. But one thing that I feel is that we are working as a team stronger than ever and very closely, but we cannot deny that it takes a toll on you being at home and staring at a computer in a Zoom video all the time for hours. And what I noticed is that a lot of people ended the day being very exhausted. And actually I read somewhere, a neurosurgeon said that working at home and looking at a Zoom video for hours at a time, it really is not that great. And because you don't blink, I mean, she went through a whole list. So what I'm doing, or what we are doing, is encouraging our team to take a day off here and there. Besides of the weekend, take a day off, 2 days off, to turn off the computer, turn off your emails. That is necessary, even if you cannot go out of the house. And also depends what type of job you do. In my area, it's a lot with songwriters, and it's signing artists and songwriters. And then we get on Zoom videos and we do sessions. But it's different as if somebody has to work at home on database, on data entry, and being in front of a computer for 8 hours, sitting at a table and just doing that. So there is a difference. So for us, for me, for my company, it has been, we haven't stopped. I mean, the work hasn't stopped. We are working a lot. We are signing a lot of people. but it is taking a toll, and we are very, very aware of that, and we encourage our teams to talk, to take a day off, to say if they need any help. So we have a lot of communication and empathy and connectivity with our teams around the globe.
Now, many of your colleagues or your ecosystem are in the creative industry. Is that something that's distinct from other facilities or other skill sets? Are you noticing the impact of working virtually to be different with creative professionals versus other colleagues?
Well, yes. First of all, the songwriters are at home, and suddenly, and the artists, and you actually can get in touch with them. Or the managers, you actually can call them and they will answer you. So that's really great. So we're able to create sessions. Some songwriters have a problem doing a session on Zoom. They prefer to do it in person. But yeah, we are doing a lot. We are working a lot. We are creating a lot of songs, etc. But on another note, it is very important to understand that at the end of the day, even though this is fantastic, you have a lot of connection, communication, you're talking to everybody all the time from everywhere. It's easy for me now to be talking to Argentina, to Mexico, etc. We are missing the personal touch. We're missing the one-on-one touch. So even though this is fantastic, we haven't stopped, we haven't missed a beat. We eventually are going to have to start meeting, in person, and we're missing that. We're missing going to the office, etc.
Now, Latin America is a large region with many different countries and different political systems. How are you being sensitive to the different contexts and environments in which your colleagues across the region are living?
Well, definitely we are not going to follow, like they're in quarantine. If the government says now you can go out, we're not telling them to go back to the office. It has to be, everybody has to be very comfortable. And we have to be very aware of that. And we need to make our teams and our employees really comfortable and to go back. So that we're going to do whatever we have to do. And I just think that they also, by the way, when we're talking about when we talk to our teams, they also talk with each other. Suddenly that communication exists. Like, for example, I will talk to Mexico, Argentina, they're all report to me, but suddenly between them, they're starting to talk and they're starting to get in Zoom calls, and the creativity and the stuff that is coming out from all those meetings is unbelievable, because I do believe that after this, new things are coming out, new creative ways are coming out, and it's going to be a boom of creativity and of thinking outside of the box. That's another, I think, main thing we're noticing. People thinking out of the box, and all these things are coming up because of the, economical issue and how they impact in the business or not. So everybody's thinking out of the box. Everybody's coming out with creative ways to do business. So it's really, we're going to see a lot of great stuff coming out of this.
Well, thank you for that, Alex. Now let's go over to Ginger. So Ginger, the first question is the same one. What are you doing differently as a leader now in this environment than pre-COVID?
Well, we have a saying that I think whether it's COVID right now or whether it was 9/11 or SARS, there's always elements that come out that you can learn from, right? Whether it's the innovation and the creativity, whether it's better connecting as teams. So we say a crisis is a terrible thing to waste. There's so much you can learn from a crisis to be closer together. One of the things we're doing and we've done in the past is, number one, going back to Ed's point on vision is to really define reality for the teams, right? We don't have all the answers. They don't have all the answers, no matter where our team members are located around the world. but we need to listen to each other, transparently share what we know, transparently share what we don't know, and define a new reality. Quickly adapt to the plan that we had to get to not even the new normal, but the next normal going forward, and come together closely as a team. So that was number one, really working together and reset an adapted vision and plan for our teams, for our distribution partners, for our owners in this case. And then really, how do we execute that as a team? That's the part of leading. And if you think of global, right? Really understanding how the reality is different in every single market and country around the world that we work in. And that's a very surgical approach of knowing what can be transversal and may need to stay the same as we build and deliver outstanding global brands, and what areas we really need to, now more than ever, add that regional top spin and really that market nuance for what may be needed right now surgically in that market. And then the last is teams. I do agree. I think teams have become closer than ever. I know I feel very fortunate that ours has. I've seen that in the past with Crisis, living and working around the world with other companies in hospitality. And there's just an opportunity to, once a clear adapted vision is set, to rally the teams and become even stronger. So two practical elements that we had, but we've built on in the Crisis, and one new. One is, for all of our larger global projects, we've always looked across our team and really married two people leading, or a lead and a support, and have each leader based in a different country. So we're really gaining that nuance of new ideas, innovation, cultural blending on all of our large global projects. The second is, we've really been using the time zones in our favor, right? So one group working on a project, turning it over to the next group. We like to say that the sun never sets on global luxury, that we're really using the time zones around the world to work continuously. And then I'd say the new element that we've added in much more is every single call is always video. Even if it's a quick call, we'll use, FaceTime, some sort of video quickly, so that we're connecting with people. And this brings even enhanced layer of authenticity to teams, right? We can see what's back in someone's bookcase. We can see their kids running in, or their pets joining them, walking across the screen, right? As the cat comes. It brings a sense of authenticity, of encouraging more than ever people to bring their whole selves to work. And that's what really makes teams so effective and so successful.
Now, Ginger, we have to acknowledge that the hospitality sector has been very hard hit by the crisis.
Correct.
Must be putting an extra toll on your colleagues and on your teams. How do you keep people engaged, motivated, and inspired for, as you rightly said, the next phase?
I've been lucky enough, outside of some time with CPG and Coca-Cola, to have spent all of my career in hospitality. Before IHG, working for Disney in multiple continents and countries around the world, sitting on one of their global boards. And hospitality, for many of us, is part of our DNA. It's not only a job we do, it's part of us, which is connecting with people around the world, discovering new cultures. It's really part of that excitement of living, is discovering the world, and some of the best way to do that is to connect with different people around the globe, both as leaders and as explorers. So I think part of it, in these times of crisis, the hospitality industry has always come back in a new way, right? And it's connecting with that deep passion inside of our teams and inside of our owners and partners around the world to listen, empathize. I almost call it commercial empathy. Really understanding what needs to change and what needs to stay the same, and have that vision and leadership to drive that forward, but starting with listening and understanding, and then really determining what will change, right, going forward, whether it's levels of cleanliness, whether it's protocols that we saw for flying after 9/11, really making sure that guests and customers are always 100% feeling secure, feeling that their needs are met. And then new innovation will come out of it, as it always does.
It's fascinating, because integral to the luxury experience, and particularly in hospitality, is that touch point with the colleagues at the venue, in the hotel, on the property. But they need to be their whole selves. They need to be present, engaged, and it's tough. It has to be tough at this time. Any practical advice for those of us who are not in hospitality, because as someone who lives the world of brand, I often tell clients, arguably, we're all in the hospitality business now.
Absolutely.
Because every brand needs to create a meaningful experience with customers. Any transferable lessons you would briefly share with us from hospitality in this context that we can all apply?
Absolutely. Before you build any brand, right, and if you start at hospitality, it starts with building the culture of the team and the organization. And by really, I always say, and I've heard it probably said better in a recent book, actually, to quote a recent Bob Iger book, The Ride of a Lifetime, it's don't just hire people who are good at their job, hire good people, right? And if you hire good people, you build a good culture, and you build then people who are actually not following standards or protocols. They're doing what they feel is right. And that's the case whether you're greeting someone at a hotel or a luxury boutique or at a concert or whatever your brand may be. You hire the quality of people. The skills will get you in the door. And then the quality of people who believe in the culture and believe in the purpose and can drive it forward with innovation in their own way is absolutely paramount, particularly when it comes to hospitality and guest interaction.
So that's really hire for attitude, train for aptitude, as it were?
Absolutely, yes.
Are there differences now that we're working virtually in the qualities you seek in that colleague?
I think the first and foremost, it's very, very exciting to many, many people for the opportunity to step in and lead global teams or be a team member that are part of global teams, right? We're always learning. There's this excitement and this diversity that by itself is always bringing innovation. If people are really open and listening to others and taking the nuances, you get more ideas and more innovation, the more new stimulus you insert. And whether you're in a crisis or not, bringing in that diversity of stimulus and listening to it and really realizing great ideas can come from anywhere in any part of a team or partner. That helps really drive elements forward. I think what's more important now than ever is to embrace that in this crisis and not feel we're so busy solving other things that we're putting that to the side. Now is more important than ever, actually, to be listening to ideas from all around the world, and quite frankly, even opening up more to partners around the world. Really, we've had many conversations of going back to past partners we've worked with successfully and pulling in new ones and saying, everyone is figuring this out. Let's get to a point where 1 + 1 makes 3 and really pull people together and drive something stronger. I think there's more openness for people working together and trying new things, both inside a company and outside, than there's been in a long time in our industries, which is very exciting.
Thank you so much, Ginger. So now let's head back to New York and Ed. Sesame Workshop, fantastic organization. And you're at headquarters in New York, but if my research is correct, extensive experience across Asia, Japan, Singapore, etc. Lots of perspectives there, a deep well, if you'll pardon the pun, to draw on. So Ed, how has it been? You too are at the nexus of creative and commercial. How has it been at headquarters, liaising with your colleagues around the globe?
Right. So, we've had to, a lot of the same things I think Ginger was talking about really applied to us, right? So one of the things I think we've realized very quickly is that in the team at headquarters, you've lost that water cooler talk, and you've lost those hallway conversations where you bump into each other and have the casual conversations that bring a team together and provide that cohesiveness. And so one of the things that I think we've tried to do, or certainly I've tried to do with the team, is inject a little less structure into our daily communication. So we're forcing more communication on a daily basis in some ways by having daily meetings and all of those Zoom calls or video calls that we've been talking about. But I've tried to make them a little less structured and allow a little more room for people to actually have that banter and that casual talk that really allows you to develop personal relationships with each other, right? So one thing that's come out of that, as you asked me about Asia in particular, is our colleagues that are so far away from us, who normally may only be on a call once a week or something like that, are now more regularly on calls with us. So we're actually having the opportunity to engage with them, not only on, kind of substantial business issues on a weekly basis, but also day to day in a more casual way. And so you're creating a deeper link, I think, between people and building that sense of team with colleagues that are all over the world, not just Asia, but we'll use Asia because it's sort of the farthest away that we can get. And I think that that's actually created a new and sort of invigorated sense of team amongst all of the international offices, including people based in HQ. So that's been, for me, one of the big learnings is allow people, even in this environment, to have that space to talk with each other and keep that sense of trust and camaraderie that's so important to operating at full capacity.
And what role does video play in those communications?
Video's been huge. I try not to force anyone to be on video. There are some people who are definitely not comfortable being on video, and I think we have to be okay with that. But it has certainly been a really useful and valuable tool for all of us to be able to see each other and feel some sense of connection. And there are things that some people can't say very easily, but being able to see each other and read the language, someone's body language becomes really important. And without video, without being able to do that in person, video is the next best thing to be able to sense when maybe someone wants to say something that they're not comfortable with. And you've got to kind of read that body language. So I think video is really crucial during this period of time.
Have you noticed meaningful distinctions among your Asian colleagues and indeed your US team in terms of propensity and comfort with video?
Within our team, not really. It's been pretty across the board. Pretty much everyone has embraced it. A few people here and there are less comfortable, as I said, but I think generally speaking, when I think about our China office in particular, people are so used to using WeChat. I'm sure everyone is familiar with WeChat as a tool, and it's such an easy integrated tool with messaging and video, and people have been using it for so long that I think that was sort of second nature for them. If anything, the people in the US had to get more comfortable with using those tools.
How are you navigating the time difference? Because one of the challenges many share is in this new context of working from home, the boundaries between the working hours have merged quite meaningfully. So you have the added challenge of significant time difference. How are you creating structure, if at all, there?
So I've tried to create structure so that we have a daily meeting as a team that is on the books and doesn't change. And if someone can't make it for any reason at all, that's fine, but we don't want to move it around. I wanted to provide enough structure that people know there is a moment every day where we come together at a time that is generally accessible to everyone. And then beyond that, on a personal level, we just have to be more flexible right now than we have ever been. So the notion of flexible working hours and flexible working arrangements becomes, I think, really critical right now. And our goal has to be to get the work done and to have enough space for communication, but also understand that people have childcare issues, they have healthcare issues, they have any number of things that they have to make themselves lunch. You have to allow people the time to go do that. I think one of the earliest learnings in sort of the quarantine process was everyone realized they hadn't scheduled any time to prepare food to eat because they were used to ordering it. So, those things we had to learn over a course of weeks. So I think the flexibility to create those moments where, in the schedule where people can be free, they can balance what's going on in their world, in their personal life with work, and just understand that at the end of the day, we just have to get the work done, but it doesn't have to be done in exactly the same timeline that it would have been done in normal working, in normal office circumstances.
Now, some of the regions in China are already open. Are some of your colleagues back at the office?
Our entire office is back already. So most of China has reopened. We have unfortunately seen reports, this past week that Beijing is seeing a significant number of new cases, and they have shut down multiple markets, and we're watching that closely. But as you know, the theme parks are back opening with certain protocols and limitations on attendance, and most offices are now back and operational. We are not requiring anyone to go to the office if they're not comfortable. I think our number one priority is that our team be comfortable and feel okay about having to get on the subway, having to go to an office building that's shared space, but also providing them with the best environment we can provide them with. So we're paying close attention to the protocols that are used in our offices around cleaning and any measures around admittance to the office building, temperature checks, et cetera, masks, usage of masks, et cetera. But right now the team are happy to be back at the office, I think, after being out for a period of time, and we just continue to monitor it carefully.
What are you learning in this transition from the colleagues in China working from home for a period of time, now back in the office? Are there changes in behavior that are exhibiting themselves in this new way?
I think the first thing I realized very early, because China was the first office, obviously, to go out under quarantine, it became obvious very quickly how easy it is for a team to break down, and how easy it is for everyone to sort of retreat to their own corners and just do their jobs. And so you have, as managers and as team leaders, you have to provide the tools to the team to stay connected and to prevent that from happening. Because once people kind of retreat and just go after their day-to-day job, their day-to-day goals, you lose that power of being, bigger than the sum of your parts. And I think that was our number one learning very, very early on. And immediately we started to institute ways to bring the team together and communicate in different ways. And thankfully that learning allowed us, by the time we got to quarantines in the US and other parts of the world, we were able to apply that right from the beginning. So we didn't miss a beat, and we were able to keep our teams more connected.
Can you give us some examples of the ways in which you created that integration?
Sure. So as I mentioned, we're doing daily meetings. So now there's daily team meetings that are available to everyone to join, from direct reports to a larger team. The larger team not being every day, but at least direct reports every day. And I encourage them to do the same thing with theirs. We have instituted monthly all staff meetings in our organization. So what we would normally do on a quarterly basis as we close our financials and update our board, we would talk to the entire organization about the health of the organization and give updates. We're now doing that on a monthly basis to provide people just a little bit more touch point, a little bit more opportunity to ask questions and understand the ins and outs of what we're going through and how we're planning and what kind of path we're charting to see our way through this crisis.
Ed, what lessons have you learned as you've witnessed the colleagues in China returning to the office from being in quarantine that you will apply when hopefully in the near term that will be an option for your New York colleagues?
I think that, again, just flexibility around people coming back when they're ready. I think just giving them your assurance that you're not forcing anyone to do anything that they don't feel comfortable with relieves a little bit of stress and alleviates stress on people that will, I think, prevent productivity. And so we've definitely already messaged that to our teams everywhere else around the world, that when we do start to return, we will be returning with obviously new protocols, but also it will be on a voluntary basis as you feel comfortable. And I think that's a really important message to give to people, so they don't harbor this stress in advance of a reopening. And I think we want to avoid that. So that's, I think, one key learning.
Any observable difference between how you lead now versus your style, or lead or manage, we can use the terms interchangeably, pre-COVID?
Well, we've had there are the sort of just regular operational issues that have had to change. We have had to intensify our efforts around budgeting and forecasting protocols, right? So we've had to put up, we've had to do more work. This has been probably the most challenging in my entire career, the most challenging budgeting process I've ever been through, because we don't know what we don't know. So we've had to look at so many different, possibilities and try to triangulate what we think is the most likely scenario for the next year. That has put a lot of pressure on the team to not only for themselves, but also pressure on our partners to try to forecast and see where we're, as best we can, where we think we're going to end up next year. And that has been, I think, hugely challenging, but also rewarding. So that was one thing where we had to lean in more on that financial analysis and planning side. And then on the other side of things, I think, as I mentioned earlier, we had to lean into the teamwork side of things. We had to lean into, because I should mention, it's not only your immediate team. How do I stay connected to the entire organization? How do I get my team to stay connected with the domestic team and with the production team? Those are a little harder to manage. And so creating with the other leaders across the organization those opportunities to talk amongst each other. So I will bring in other departments into my departmental meetings just to have a conversation about things that they're going through, or find some shared piece of business that we can talk about. And sometimes it's just a ruse to create an opportunity to talk.
Yes, fantastic. Well, thank you for that, Ed. Fascinating sharing your experiences from Asia to New York City. So staying in New York, let's head over to Helena. So Helena, up until recently, you had a leadership role at Audible, an Amazon company. Tell us about that. Tell us about how your team and your organization has been impacted and how that's influenced your global team leadership style and practices.
So it's interesting because the last kind of 6-7 months at Audible, I had a very strategic US focused role where we were working through business plans for the next 3 years. So I actually turned it on its head. So and I'm a global communications expert. I even teach it. So it's one of those things that I'm very passionate about. So I read up about it and make sure that I practice what I preach, right? So it's interesting because I realized that the US teams had to learn a lot about how to communicate. All of our panel members are so used to communicating very effectively because of the fact that they're working with international people with different cultures, different political system, different backgrounds, all of those things. So there is this understanding of how people are different and how you should adjust your approach to people because of the fact that they're different. In the US, people just don't have that innate kind of reaction when they are in meetings, right? You either are a type A personality and you talk, or you are someone in the background and people get used to that. I think the US teams had to change. And I think I've taken some time with my team members as well as some of my leaders to really talk through how to approach these Zoom meetings and these constantly, really take time to figure out the differences between the people that you're working with, the people, giving everyone a voice, right? Making sure that you're not leaving people behind because it's not in their, manner to speak up, because it's easier to stay in the background because the opportunity doesn't come along. We all know how hard it is sometimes to have a word edge way into a Zoom meeting. So I think for us, it was a learning, probably more of a US learning of how to really approach meetings with different people, because let's face it, whether you are in the US or whether you are global, we're all different. We're all diverse. We all have different backgrounds. We're all culturally different. And I think that's one of the things I tell in my class all the time. I said, you might not be a global leader or global team member. You will always deal with people from different cultures, regardless of where you work. Whether you never leave your hometown, whether you never leave, headquarters, and you only work with there's always going to be that diversity. So I think that was a wake-up call for a lot of my peers and a lot of people that I work with at Audible, is to say, okay, we have to approach this different. And to Ed and Ed's point too about, changing your communication style, thinking through your organizational style, culture even. I'm sure a lot of companies are going to come out of this with a different culture. They're going to look at their people differently. They're going to see, okay, we have now got to know a little bit more the soul of our company, and let's work on that. Let's make sure that we keep, harvesting that amazing kind of, soul that this company has.
So Helena, let's unpack that a little, please. What are the practical things you can do in terms of a meeting to make it more productive and more empathetic to all the participants? Practical tips.
Practical tips. Plan your meeting out. I know it sounds, people go into meetings and it's all very casual. Don't make it casual. Be very specific at what your agenda is and how you will run it. In my entire global career, I was a big believer of having a different person run my meetings. So if we had 7, 8 different countries on the line, I would ask Japan to be the lead for that particular meeting and make sure they had time to prepare, right? But it gave them an opportunity to have their voices heard, first of all, show their leadership skills, right? And really tell a story about what they were working on and how they were doing things. So that I think is super important. When you go around the room, start with the least heard voice. Don't go with your type A personality or that person that speaks perfect English, because sometimes those that don't speak great English actually are smarter than those that have big, loud voices. So take your time. And if you feel that that person might not necessarily be as outspoken, prompt, give an example, say, hey, Joe, wherever in India, that's not an Indian name, that's actually really, but you have done this great campaign, this marketing campaign. Can you tell everyone about it? So prompt, give people something to talk about so they feel like, oh yeah, I'm very proud of this. It not only gives them this moment of shining, it also gives this moment of other people being able to listen to the ideas coming out of different countries. So again, I think it's facilitating, I think, is one of the things that people tend to forget to do in meetings. And Margaret, you are an absolute star at it. But I have been in places where that's not something that people are very comfortable doing. But it's important because it means that you really do give every single person a voice.
Sounds like more work.
It is more work, but the outcome of it is going to be exponential, right? Because what you'll get is you'll get creativity, you get great brainstorms, you get people that walk away and say, hey, that campaign in Japan was amazing. I should think through maybe some of these things. And really, if you take time to listen to what other people do, you might actually be better at your job too, because you're not just stuck into your, oh, I've done this today and my campaign ran really well. And you forget that there's so much great creativity out there. So absorbing that, and it's more work, but I'm telling you, I think you'll have a big win afterwards.
Now, Helena, you work either adjacent to or in the context of Audible directly in the technology sector. Any particular observations around people who work in technology, their appetite for the different tools, how that may be similar or different from other sectors, and are there lessons all of us can apply from that experience?
So it's interesting because, we are a technology company, but one of the things that we struggled with, as probably a lot of people did, is that how do we brainstorm effectively? How do we whiteboard effectively? And it's really interesting. It's like simple thing. We're all sitting around. It's like, we're a technology company. How could we struggle with the fact that we can't whiteboard? As we all know, in a lot of companies, but technology specific, whiteboarding is the way they work, right? You sit down, everything is, let's write it down. And, the beauty about working for used to work for a big company like Amazon, they, within probably 2 weeks, put together this great new app technology, which is specifically for whiteboarding. So the good news is that I think as a technology company, we've added additional platforms that will help people work better together in the future, because as you know, I think our company specifically, And Amazon as a whole probably will not see people coming back for a long time. I think, definitely Amazon Seattle, not before October, maybe not even before the end of the year. So there is this kind of, we need to make sure that our technology is as efficient and as good as possible to counteract the fact to what Alex and Ed and Ginger said, the fact that you're not connected with people and you're not seeing them day to day. So how can we create all of these hubs where you feel like you are connecting and you're really doing some, what is it called, water cooler talk?
Yes. A question coming in on the chat, multi-language. Inherently, when we're talking to colleagues in different regions, often their English is not their first language. How do you manage that? And is it different on Zoom to in the more in-person context where you can take cues beyond the verbal expression of thought?
100%. You need to, I think the patience was my word in the beginning. I think you have to be even more patient. And you really need to give people a moment to answer. And don't try and get it out of them. Just let them form their ideas. And I think if you're a good either team member or team leader, you know your people and you know that they're coming to that idea. I have it too. Listen, I'm from Belgium. I'm a Flemish speaker, and Ed knows that. He has worked with me closely. Sometimes I get stuck in my brain with translating a word or a sentence, and it's not coming out, and you're like, and you've got to make sure as a leader that you take the time. And if that means there's silence for a minute, there is silence for a minute. So, it's interesting. I think language, that's been always my big kind of focus, knowing that someone is so super bright, but their English might not sound as great. Take the time, be patient.
And I really appreciate that point, the power of silence. Silence is okay. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it can actually speak volumes. Wonderful. Well, thank you for that, Helena. We have some other questions coming in. Alex, I know you wanted to interject. Please do.
Yes, I just want to, first of all, what Helena said is so spot on, at least for me. Obviously, my language, English language, is not the perfect. But one thing that I realized in this environment of video conference, actually the people that the language, English language is not their first language, they have had more opportunity to shine. Because when you're on the phone, it's very difficult to see the other person's reaction when you're not speaking the language very well. And when you see the other person paying attention, you are more propense to continue saying your thought, even though it's not perfect. So I'm seeing a lot of that, number one. And number two, and another thing that Helena said is that before, like if I will go to a territory and meet with my top leaders, now I'm asking each territory's top leaders to include their top leaders into the Zoom meeting. So before I maybe had a meeting with 8 people, now it's 15 people, and everybody has a chance to talk. So it's becoming a big family. And I just want one more thing. Can I answer a chat? Somebody mentioned something in a chat very quickly. What I meant about taking days off, that's what works for our company. Any company has to take whatever works for them. But the most important thing is to make their employees de-stress and be very conscious about how much we're pushing them and what is the limit, and when we need to encourage them to take a step back and take a big breath.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Alex. And I want a couple of other questions coming in on the chat that are very interesting. One question is, many of our audience are in leadership positions, but they are also team members as well as leaders. Ginger, maybe you'll get us started. What tips would you offer for those of us who are wearing our team member hat? How to be a good team member in a virtual environment?
Perfect, thank you. It's interesting because all of us are team members and all of us are leaders, right? We're in different roles, and as leaders, we need to realize that leadership can come across the team and actually should come across the team. So I think as someone who may feel that they're a team member but not a leader, the very first thing I would suggest is that they also have a shift in their mindset and realize that they are also a leader and just as responsible for setting new ideas and directions through their suggestions, and just as much of an important leader for setting a culture of the team and speaking up with the ideas. It's very, very important that the team is flat as well as vertical, right? And that's something that we try and really think through, is that everyone in the team should lead their own projects. I loved, Helena, your conversation of switching the calls around the world and having different team members lead, right? I think that's important, and also helped by pre-preparation and pre-read for people who might be a little bit less comfortable speaking up. But in terms of, if you're a team member and one is stepping into and really owning the leadership role that you have every single day. The second is to say, as a team member, you are also owning your area of expertise, and that's just as critical. So one element is not only to think how you take your ideas and feed them up through the team, but also horizontally. One practical tip that we've done is for all of our team members around the world, we actually set individual one-on-one times throughout the year via a calendar where one or two team members will connect, two team members or three team members will connect across the world and only talk about leadership and development feedback for the other person, right? So it's their personal development plan that it's coming horizontally across the team, because peers are seeing people and working with them, and they have great feedback that can help everyone on their own development journey. And that's created much more of a feeling of leadership, experiencing management, giving people feedback, creating caring, empathy, and actually vision setting when you have the responsibility as a team member to say, I'm going to give constructive feedback to my peer and help them on their own development journey, just as I'm going to give feedback to my peer on what could help them in their market or what feedback I need for my project to make it more successful in our project across the team. And then lastly, people build confidence to speak up more and more and give their feedback across the broader teams and across the broader organizations.
Helena, what do you tell your students in terms of being good team members?
I think understanding the cultural differences that you are dealing with. I know I talked about it, but, really, describe, interpret, and evaluate, the kind of person as a whole, and that, where they coming from. Is there a country that is more based on collectivism, or is it more individualistic? Is it a country that's more focused on being or doing? I mean, all of these things, I know it sounds very complicated, but it's actually not. I mean, really understanding cultural differences and doing your homework will make you such a great team member, and people will open up to you. You will get better business done. You will get better decisions. So I'm a big believer in do your homework before either you travel and do your business, or do your homework with your own team members, whether you're working with someone who is from Indian descent or someone who is from Belgian descent, or wherever they come from. Do your homework, and I think it will make you such a better team member.
Another question, Ed, I'd like you to think about first is self-care. One of my observations in working with senior leaders is that we try terribly hard to be attentive to our families, to our colleagues, to our peers, to our superiors, to our bosses, to our boards. But sometimes we neglect self-care. And it's a conversation that's often missing. In my experience in leading many of these discussions, it almost feels indulgent to go there. But in the remaining moments, I'd like us to go there. As leaders, very briefly, starting with Ed, how do we make sure we take care of ourselves? How have you prioritized that, if at all? Personally, I give myself a C grade. I'm
Yeah.
very poor at this, so I would love to learn from all of you. Ed.
Sure. Well, it's a fantastic question, and it's something I preach to my team all the time. Please take care of yourselves. You know, it is so critical because we feel the fatigue setting in, right? We feel this video call fatigue, this endless meeting fatigue, especially for international teams who are used to being on the road and traveling. They're not used to office culture 24/7, 365. We're used to having that break where we're on the road for a week and you're answering emails, but not on the phone 8 hours a day. It is a huge adjustment to me personally and to most of my team. So, you know, I am encouraging people and encouraging myself to really set boundaries in terms of working hours. So, establish for yourself what hours you can and cannot work, and try to really be true to that. So if you know that you need an hour in the middle of the day to do something, then schedule that accordingly. And you have the right to say no to meetings. You don't have to accept every meeting that, you know, Outlook for me is one of the worst inventions that's ever happened, right? Because people can access your calendar and drop meetings on it without your notice. So I have finally gotten myself to a place where I feel very comfortable hitting the decline button on meetings that no one called me about in advance and asked me to join, because I have blocks on my schedule for a reason, to give myself room to breathe and, quote, do the work, right? We are so busy in meetings all day that I think we find ourselves doing the work after hours. At least 50% of my day happens before or after office hours. And that's just it's not healthy. And we can't survive like that. So I know for me anyway, one of the things I'm doing is really setting boundaries on the start and end times of my day as much as I can, given that I have to talk to multiple regions around the world. But if I know I have to work late somewhere, I'll start a little bit late. I'm trying to compensate and really encouraging my team to do the same and to not lose track of, you're used to going out and having meals and having, you know, being able to leave the office and go have a meal with your friends. Don't get rid of that. Schedule a Zoom call with your friends and eat together, or whatever the case might be. Find a way to kind of keep that going, because if you don't create those times and keep those times kind of sacred for yourself, you'll just end up working through them. It's just the nature of most of our teams, I think, is people are workers and they want to get stuff done.
Anything extra you would add, Alex, very briefly in the last couple of minutes to the self-care comment?
Yes, I would say that as we stay longer and longer in this situation, it is extremely important to make sure you do something about it. I just started to do something about it 2 weeks ago. Like Ed said, started at one time, ending the day at a certain time, and not go over it. But we have to be very aware of it because this is going to go for a while. Important.
Ginger, anything else?
Yes, just two things that I would say. I think many people talk about time management, and really now more than ever, it's about energy management, right? It's less about the time you're spending on something. It's how you feel and can really re-nourish yourself. And part of that, I loved your point, Ed, on meetings. I think there is just a meeting madness that was pre-COVID, and it's even stronger now in COVID. So I really encourage practically people to look through their calendar for the next week, really determine, do you have to be in all of those meetings? Could someone else represent, pull out? And then the second point is embrace the flexibility, right? With global teams, many of us, all of us start early and may end late, but then block time during the day. One time in the last couple of weeks, I had to memorize a speech, and I realized I have time to do this. I don't have to sit inside. I went and took a walk along the beach as I was memorizing the speech, right? Which normally you would not be able to do because you'd be at the office or on an airplane. So really embrace the flexibility that's stronger than ever before, and find the good with the bad. And I think that will help our energy going forward.
Finally, Helena.
Yeah, so I think one of the great things Audible did very early on, to Ed and everyone else's point, is a block of 4 hours in the week, which was on Thursday afternoon, where no one was scheduling any meetings. No one was allowed to put any meetings in. It was a complete block of nothing to give time to think, to give time to reboot. So I would highly recommend that either, if you're not a leader, that you ask your leaders to do that. And if you are a leader, please do that for your people, because it makes a huge difference to just have a block of time that you know no one can bother.
Marvelous. Well, in thanking all of you for joining us this morning, I'd like to offer some reflections on what I believe I've learned as I listened to you very intently. To me, a single overarching theme has emerged. And it's an abstract term that's been overused, but I think little understood recently. And that's the term of empathy. We've said it in different ways. To me, empathy looks at the reality to understand others' feelings and acts to connect. And COVID-19 represents a reality characterized by tremendous difficulty. How we respond is a choice characterized by tremendous opportunity and urgency, as well as potentially innovation. It seems to me, in listening to you, that you have essentially, you're cultivating this empathy through three beliefs. The first, marketing leadership, is a contact sport. You are gaining this empathy by direct contact with your colleagues. You're anchored in humility and a sense of purpose, and that is buoying you to seek out diverse views, to be open to others' inputs, to listen, to act on that understanding, to integrate it and bring it back to your organizations. And in so doing, you appear to me to be leading with relevance and impact. A second belief that I've inferred is that agility is powered by flexibility. Empathy is not a goal, it is a mechanism of achieving a goal. You're illuminating leadership and empathy in action. You continue to refresh your points of view and disengage from old marketing or old management paradigms to embrace what's new, what's relevant, and what's high impact in this context. And in so doing, you are unleashing tremendous employee engagement and innovation that we heard about today. The third belief that I believe is inspiring your empathy is the idea that empathy at scale is an organizing principle. Implicit in your comments is the recognition that empathy is best when it is an organizational capability, practiced habitually, and not the sole purview of so-called leaders displayed in times of crisis. By demonstrating solidarity, disregarding old assumptions, and encouraging collective resilience, you are creating the kind of culture where empathy flourishes, where compassion and curiosity are expected. And in so doing, I believe you are creating empathetic organizations. Thank you, Helena, Alex, Ginger, and Ed, for sharing your insights with humility and grace. And I wish you all the very best. We look forward to tracking your progress in the weeks and months ahead. Thank you, and have a wonderful day.